Welcome to our Imunify360 introductory video. In this video, I will discuss the basics of using Imunify360 with explanations of each menu item, and we will finish with discussions on some of the basic settings you may wish to interact with. Let's start with the understanding that the Imunify360 interface is the same UI experience inside of each Plesk, WHM cPanel, and Direct Admin. So let's start with the dashboard. The central dashboard is available directly in your control panel. This lets you check the overall state of your server and manage all aspects of its security. The central dashboard displays all security events with the latest incidents updated in real time. To dig deeper, you can use the other menu items which will be covered throughout this video. The dashboard starts by showing you the current protection status. If you are not in good status, there will be recommendations on how to bring your security level up. Now, let's start by looking at the incidents and alerts. The dashboard can be filtered by time to show events in the last 24 hours, the last 7 days, and the last 30 days. Each item has the ability to be adjusted between histogram and heat map view. The heat map view allows you to zero in on the number of events in any given country. So here you can see that I have the ability to select into the heat map, and I can actually zoom in to a specific region to see what type of events are coming in. In this case, I have 1 event from Russia, 3 from China, and 1 from Vietnam. I can move the map over to the United States and see that I had 7 within the United States. So the alerts total provides me with information based on security incidences that were recorded within the selected time interval. The data includes all mod security incidences, Imunify360 DOS plugin alerts, as well as OSSEC alerts, and some others. The detected malware section provides the number of unique malware files detected within the selected period. Then we come down to CAPTCHA events. CAPTCHA events is recorded requests coming from detected attacks or bad bots that show the CAPTCHA challenge within the selected interval. Then we also have the ability to look at WAF alerts. These are web attacks recorded by mod security within the selected time interval. It may include content management system brute forces, login attempts, website hacking attempts, as well as other access-sensitive files. And the last section is OSSEC, network level attacks. Attacks against network services. This is your FTP, your SSH, your POP, your IMAP, etc., recorded by the OSSEC IDS within the selected time interval. It includes authentication failures, requests from blocked IPs, break-in attempt alerts, and more. Now let's go ahead and move up to our next tab, the Incidents tab. We choose the Incident tab to view and manage the list of all incidents. The table displays a list of detected incidents with all of the information about the incident's reasons. Now we have multiple filters that we can utilize. We have the time frame filter, which allows filtering incidences by a different time period. Then we move over to lists, which gives us the ability to look at and filter by whitelist, blacklist, gray list, or all of the lists. Then we have the search field. This allows showing all incidences of a proper IP address, domain, or description. This is enabled by ticking the description IP checkbox to enable the input field where we can actually input the proper IP or part of it, domain or description, and filter the list. We also have the country checkbox, which allows for filtering the incidences by abuser's country. Let's move over and look at the auto refresh button. We can enable auto refresh, and this enables the ability for Imunify360 to automatically update us with live action on the incidences that are currently happening within the server. This means we do not have to refresh the web page. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn this back off in the interest of performing the rest of this demonstration. Now let's look at the columns that are available in our incident list. We can start with date. Date is the actual time the incident happened. The IP address is the IP address of the abuser. Now you'll notice that there are different colors available here. There'll be a gray bubble, which means that the IP address is in the current gray list. So every action from this IP address will be directed to a CAPTCHA. If it's a blue bubble, this means that the IP address is currently in no list. It is not in the white, black, or gray list. The IP is not blocked. A white bubble means that the IP address is in the white list. The IP will never be blocked by Imunify360. And a black bubble means that the IP address is currently in the blacklist. Any access from the IP address will be totally blocked without the ability to unblock by the CAPTCHA. No bubble is shown when an incident doesn't contain an IP address. The count column is the number of times the abuser tried to repeat the same action. And the event column is the description of the event or suspicious activity as it is described by the OSSec and mod security sensors. And then we come to the severity column. Severity level of the incident as it is estimated in OSSec security levels and mod security levels. And there's three colors that signify different levels. Green signifies the mod security level 7 to 5 or OSSec 0 to 3. Orange signifies the mod security level 4 or OSSec 4 to 10. And red signifies mod security level 3 to 0 or OSSec level 11 to 15. And then the last column is actions. This gives you the ability to take further actions beyond what Imunify360 has already carried out. You have the ability, as you see, with a blue IP address that is not in any of the lists, to add it to a white list or black list. If we come down and review a gray listed IP address, we have the ability to move it to the white list, black list, or remove it from all lists. And we also have the ability to disable a rule if it's something that is causing problems within our system, based on specific code that you may have developed or your customers may have developed in-house. Now that gives us the ability under actions to interact with one incident, but if we need to interact with multiple, in this case we see that all of these instances with the gray list are the same IP address. We can come down and select on each of these within the checkbox, and then we can come up to the group actions and carry out an action such as add to the white list, black list, or remove from all lists. And that finishes up the Incidents tab. Now let's move on and discuss the Firewall section. Under the Firewall, we have 4 tabs. These tabs allow for viewing and managing the IP addresses in the specific lists. The white list is allowing all IP addresses and all activity from those IP addresses. The gray list is an auto-generated list of IP addresses blocked by Imunify360 based on sensor alerts and alerts from the central server. The black list is blocking all traffic and communication from the IP addresses in the list. And the blocked ports allows for managing the list of ports that we're blocking. Now with all 4 of these, we have the same filters that are available here. We can go in and filter based off of IP address. This can be a partial IP or a complete IP address. We have the ability to put in a country with autocomplete and search through the origin country of the IP addresses. And then we have the ability to also look for specific comments. Now, if we come in and interact with each of these lists, we have the ability to not only look at the content in the list, but also carry out specific actions on the IPs in the list. So here we can come in and under IP, under actions, we have the ability to move an IP address from the white list to the black list. We can remove full access, and we can also delete the IP address permanently. We can carry out group actions across multiple IP addresses, and here you see group action. We can move to the blacklist, completely grant full access or remove full access, and we can delete permanently with the group actions. And if we want to manually add an IP address, we can come in and click on the Add button. We can enter in the IP address. We can fill in a comment. We also have the ability to put in the specific TTL based on days or hours. Make sure that the radio button for the whitelist is selected. If you want to allow full access, you can click the checkbox, and then you can click on Add to add the IP address. Under the gray list, you have the ability to come in and carry out individual actions. You can move the IP address from the gray list to the white list or black list. You can also delete it permanently. And just as before, you can carry out group actions of being able to move to the white list, black list, or delete permanently. We can come into the black list. Under the black list, the actions available to us are to move to the white list or to delete permanently, and the same thing with group activity. So group actions, we can move it to the white list, delete permanently. Now, if we want to add a IP address manually to the blacklist, we can come up and click on the Add button. The pop-up comes up. It's similar. We have the ability to put in the IP address. We can put in a comment as to why we are putting this in the blacklist. We can come in down and enter in the TTL, and we can adjust that for days or hours. Again, making sure that the blacklist is checked and adding the IP. We also have the ability under the blacklist section to put in a country. So we can come in, select on country. We have the entire list. You can select the specific country you would like to block, put in a comment as to why, and you can click on Add Country to the blacklist. And that brings us over to the ports. The blocked ports feature is a feature that allows to block specific ports for both UDP and TCP connections. It is possible to add specific IPs or subnets as whitelisted so that the rules for the ports will not work. Now you can adjust the default blocking mode. The two options are to allow all open except for those specified, or all closed except for specified. And to add your ports into the list, you can come in and click on Add. You can add the port number to the port field. You can select whether this is TCP, UDP, or both. You can enter in your comment. And again, if you have specific IP addresses that you want to allow to use these ports, you can come in and put those into the whitelisted IPs. Click on Add Port, and then it's added to the ports list. Now we move into the malware scanner. Now the Imunify360 malware scanner can scan file systems for malware injection and clean up infected files. This is also a real-time file scanner for vulnerabilities, and it can scan files uploaded via FTP supporting pure FTPD, scan files uploaded via HTTP/HTTPS, scan files for changes via iNotify and other services based on the distribution you're using, scan on demand any folder needed. Malware scanning also allows you to observe scanner activity, start on-demand file scanner, manage malicious and cleanup files, and manage the ignore list. The malware scanner in the main menu of the Imunify360 admin interface has 5 tabs. Those are the users, files, scan, history, and ignore list. Let's start out with the user tab. The table has the following columns. Username, this is the display of the actual username utilized by the control panel. Home directory, the path of the user home directory starting from root. Infection status. Now this has several different options that are available. There's on-demand scanning. This is scanning was initiated or made by an administrator. Scanning is queued. Users' files are queued for scanning. A background scanning. Scheduled scanning is in progress. Scanning scheduled. Users' file scanning is scheduled. Cleaning up. This is the user's files are now in the process of being cleaned. Not yet scanned. Users' files have not been scanned yet. This is normally when there is a new user or new files added to the system. And no malware found. No malware was found during the actual scan. And then you can actually see in the case that we have here that we have users that actually have threats that have been found. We also have the ability to look at when was the scan processed, so we have a scan date. And then our final field is the actions. Now, under the actions, we have the ability for several things. We can initiate a scan and scan for malware. We have the ability to view a specific report on the malware that's been found. We can initiate cleanup of the files that were found. And if we've configured backups, we would have another option that would allow us to restore from backup rather than clean up the individual files. Clicking on the list of infections has the same effect as clicking on the view reports. If we select on this is going to take us over to our next field, which is files. And in this case, you can see that I've adjusted to a variable within the filter of only looking at those for user Jamie. Now, starting fresh with the Files tab, this table is a list of all infected files within all domains and all user accounts. As we come down, we can see the actual date the file was found to be infected. We can see the user, that is the owner of the file that is infected, and we can see the full path starting from root to get to the actual infected file. Then we have the reasoning on why this file is found to be infected. This information can be found at the docs.imunify360.com website under the malware scanner section. Then we have the ability to see the specific status as it relates to the file. Statuses that you might come across are infected, as we see here. Cleaned is when the infected file has been cleaned up or trimmed. Content has been removed. The file content was removed after cleanup, and cleanup is in progress. Now look at the actions field. We have the ability to add to ignore list. That's provided with the gear. We can add to ignore list. Now note that if this file is added to the ignore list, Imunify360 will no longer scan this file. We have the ability to view the file symbol. So we can come over to the eye, we can select on view, and we can view the content of the specific file, looking for what malware or hacker code has been injected into this file. We have the ability to come in and clean up this file. So this will go through and trim. Now, should we have configured backup solutions with the particular control panel or third-party solution that's supported, we would also have the ability to restore from backup and replace an original file back in place of this malware infected file. Now let's move on to the Scan tab. Under the Scan tab, it is possible to scan a specific directory for malware. To do so, you can come down to the field here where it says Folder to Scan. Make sure that you're starting out with a / and giving the full path to the folder which you want to scan. You also have the ability to add advanced features. You can put in a file system mask, you can put in an ignore mask, you can control the CPU and I/O consumptions, and you can also select whether you want to follow symbolic links or not. And then you can start the specific scan. When that scan is complete, it will show up in the history. So let's now move over to the History tab. The History tab contains data of all of the actions for all files. Here you'll see there's a table with a list of all files within all domains. The table has the following columns. We have the date, the action timestamp, the actual path to the actual file, starting from root. The cause column displays the way that the malicious file was found. These options could be manual, so scanning or cleaning was manually processed by a user. It could be on demand. Scanning or cleaning was initiated or made by a user, or real time. Scanning or cleaning was automatically processed by the system. Who the owner of the file is, who the initiator of the scan was, and then there is the event column. This displays the actions that were taking place with the file. There's many different options that could be presented here. So there's detected as malicious. So after scanning the file was deemed to be infected. Cleaned means the file was actually cleaned up. Failed to clean up means there was a problem during the cleaning. You can hover the mouse over top of the icon and read more information specific. Added to ignored list means the file was added to the ignored list. Imunify360 will no longer scan it. Restored to original, so file content was restored as not malicious, so this means it was overridden. Cleanup removed content, so file content was removed after cleanup. Deleted from ignore list, the file was removed from the ignore list, so Imunify360 will start to scan it again. Submitted for analysis, the file was submitted to the Imunify360 team for analysis. This is usually to look to see, is this a false positive? Is it a new file that is malicious that needs to be reviewed and new rules created for it and so on? Failed to ignore. There was a problem during adding to the ignore list. You can mouse over the icon again and read more information. And failed to delete from ignore. So there was a problem removing the file from the ignore list. Again, mouse over the icon and you can read additional information. Then that brings us to the ignore list. So in the ignore list, you see that we have specific files that are already configured and blocked depending on the control panel that you're utilizing. If you want to add manually additional files or directories, you can do so by clicking on the Add button and putting in the full path as it is directed from root. And that brings us to the end of the basic functionality of working with the malware scanner. Continuing on, we're going to move into proactive defense. Now, proactive defense is a unique Imunify360 feature that can prevent malicious activity through PHP scripts. It is available as a PHP module for Apache and Lightspeed web servers and analyzes script activity in real time using known patterns like obfuscated command injection, malicious code planting, sending spam, SQL injection, and so on. Now, proactive defense does require that you're utilizing hardened PHP or alt PHP to operate. Now you'll notice that there are actually 3 modes of operation for proactive defense. The first one is disabled. This means that proactive defense feature is not working and the system is not protected. The next is log only. This means that possible malicious activity is only logged. No actions are performed so that the action could actually be processed and injected into your system. The preferred mode is kill mode. This is the highest level of protection. The script is actually terminated as soon as the malicious activity is detected. So to select a mode, tick the desired checkbox. When an action is completed, you will see a pop-up with the successful mode change message. Now let's look at the detected events. The detected event table displays all necessary information about the PHP scripts with malicious activity detected by Imunify360 Proactive Defense. And we have the ability to filter based on the time frame in which the event was detected. The detected events table includes the following columns. We have the detection date and time. We have the description, which displays a special proactive defense rule according to which the suspicious activity was detected. We have the script path, which displays the path to the suspicious script. A number near the path describes how many times this event has repeated. The host displays the host of the script. And the first script call from displays the IP in which the first call of the script was detected. These are also color-coded. White color means that the IP address is whitelisted. Black color means that the IP address is blacklisted. Gray color means that the IP address is in the gray list. And all other IPs are colored blue. Then we have our action. This displays the current mode. And within the action column, we're able to view the specific content and adjust. We can ignore the detection rule for this file if this was a false positive. We can ignore all rules for this file if it's code that we've written ourselves or we know is clean but may be causing false positives. We can come in and look at specific URLs, IP addresses, timestamps, and specifics of the environmental variables utilized with this. And we also have the ability to view the file content. Back under Actions, we can come in and view view file content, ignore the detected rules, or ignore all rules for this file, the same that was available when we were viewing the file. And if you would like to dive deeper, feel free to go to docs.imunify360.com. And the next tab is Reputation Management. Reputation management allows to check if the domain registered on your server is safe or not based on the following reputation engines. We work with Google Safe Browsing, Yandex Safe Browsing, SpamHaus, FishTank, OpenFish. It works by us getting a list of domains periodically via a cron tab. This is sent off to a central server for Imunify360. We get results back from these lists looking for bad domains or IP addresses, and then if we find them, we provide them in the reputation management list you see here. In the list, you see that you have the ability to see the owner of the specific domain, the domain name, what type of threat the specific engine notice, and then the vendor who is providing the block to their customer base. And then you have Actions, which will bring up a web URL to give you an explanation on how to proceed with the appropriate vendor. You can also select on the vendor ID, and this will take you to their website to allow you to start working with them to clear out the domain. And that's pretty simple. And then we come to the last section, which is kernel care. Provided that you've actually installed kernel care, you'll see the effective kernel. This is the version that has been applied into memory. The real kernel version is what the boot kernel started out as. You can enable or disable auto updates and the amount of time that your server has actually been up without reboot. And that covers all of our main tabs. Okay, now that we've finished with the main tabs, we're going to move into working with the settings. So the settings, I'm not going to go in and read and discuss every option. Because they're pretty self-explanatory with the explanations that we have. Now under settings, we have the general settings tab. Here we're going to find installation information. Now my system, I already have these objects installed, but you'll have buttons for installing hardened PHP, invisible CAPTCHA, as well as kernel care. And you get a free kernel care basic license with your Imunify 360. We also have additional functionalities that may be experimental that you can turn on and use prior to us pushing them out as standard full production. Under the WAF settings, in here, these are web application firewall rules, and you can apply CSN specific WAF rules, which will go through and assist in keeping your system much more clean, in the fact that we detect what content management systems you're utilizing, like WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, and so on, and we only apply WAF rules specific to those content management systems rather than overlapping and causing false positives. We have the ability, if you're running a system with minimal amount of RAM, to minimize the ModSec security rules so that we're not overloading and causing a lot of resources, as well as direct interaction with WordPress account compromise prevention. We've got settings that you can set up for DOS protection, SMTP traffic management, integration with CSF, so that Imunify360 can manage events and IPs that are listed from CSF, auto whitelisting, controlling incident logs, Web Shield. Now, Web Shield is something you do want to make sure is enabled. This is going to control your Web Shield, your gray listing, your CAPTCHA, and so on. Now, if you're running a CDN like Cloudflare or Max CDN, then you want to set the detect IB behind CDN. What this does is it allows us to retrieve the appropriate IP address of the actual server that's trying to connect and commit some type of heinous activity. This way we're not pulling the CDN IP address and blocking all traffic, we're blocking the specific server that is causing the problems. We have, again, additional experimental features coming in. We've got CAPTCHA. If you're utilizing Google reCAPTCHA and you have an account. Now, coming in and working towards the aspect of minimizing the amount of false positives and number of servers that need to be actually blocked. Rather than blocking entire IP addresses, you can turn on OSSEC active response. And what this will do is it'll actually track the individual services at ports. So this is an OSSEC-driven IDS feature of Imunify360 that we've re-engineered. We have PAM protection, which is going to be brute force against potential login attempts to your server, making sure that services that don't have specific users assigned to them are blocked immediately. So again, this minimizes the amount of CPU and load on your servers all the way around. Error reporting as well, and then contact details if you want to put your administrative contact information in. Next, moving on to the malware settings. Now, malware scanning takes a lot of resources because we're scanning a lot of files and different file sizes and different file types. Now, to try to minimize the amount of resources that we use on your server, because we don't obviously understand the amount of resources that you have across CPU, number of cores, I/O that are going to be utilized with that, how much memory and whatnot you have. We're going to allow you to adjust the CPU consumption and I/O consumption that's viable and workable for your particular server. Now, something we want to explain ahead of time is that your very first scan is legitimately going to take some time and some resources. This is because we have to scan all of the files that are sitting on your server. And then within your websites, you may not have just a couple hundred pages or a couple thousand, but you could have tens of thousands of files that we need to go through and scan. So the first scan is legitimately going to be resource intensive, but I'm going to show you how you can minimize future scans with the settings. So not only coming in and adjusting the CPU consumption and I/O consumption, but you can come in and tell it to automatically scan all modified files. This way, if a file has been scanned, we won't have to scan it again with a setting that we have down towards the bottom. And before I jump through these top ones, I'm going to come down here and initialize this one first. And that's putting in a checkbox for Enable Rapid Scan. What Rapid Scan does is it enables us the ability to create a metadata cache for all of the files that we are scanning. This means that if we've scanned a file and that file has not changed, we do not need to scan it again. So rather than having to scan every single file every single time a scan is run, we can enable that feature and then come in and enable these. Automatically scan all files modified. So we scan them when they make a change. Optimize real-time scan by looking at, again, what file systems are changed compared with services like iNotify or File Change API, depending on the operating system that you're using. Automatically scanning any file uploaded utilizing the web or uploaded via FTP if you have pure FTPD. Automatically send suspicious malicious activity for analysis by our security team, so they're making sure that it's not a false positive or creating signatures for it. So that goes through with the enabled rapid scan so that any subsequent scans are extremely fast. We only have to scan modified files, which means if all of these other features are being used, the scan should be extremely short. So from there, we also have the ability to interact with how do we deal with these modified files. So we have different methods around cleanup. So we can show the dashboard, we can clean it up, and we'll go through and keep a copy of the file if we make changes or we what we call trim. So we have features like binary ELF malware detection. So this searches all of the binary ELF files for user home in the user home directory and considers them malicious if they show up. We have new features that we're enabling currently under experimental for you to test, and these will come through the system as we're constantly evolving and changing because hackers constantly evolve and change. So our services are constantly evolving with them. So we go through and we can enable hyperscan. You have the ability to control background scannings at specific times that you want, and then how do you want to clean up. So we recommend coming in and trimming instead of deleting and removing a file. And here again, we'll keep this modified file, the original, for 14 days. So proactive defense, enabling the blamer, and so on, PHP immunity. These give us the ability to actually go through and track files and so on. So read through these, read through the documents. It'll give you a little bit more information, but that's a quick overview. If you set any of the changes, obviously hit Save Change. Next, we have backups. Now, under the backups, this is the opportunity to make sure that we're not just trimming files, but we can restore original files that are clean back to the system based on your backups. Now, we have different backup providers that are available. We have Acronis backup and Cloud Linux backup. Cloud Linux backup is powered by Acronis, and then your native control panel. So this is a cPanel server. We have cPanel backups. If you've got Plesk, we'd use Plesk backups and so on. Now, within the backup settings, the Cloud Linux backup for Imunify360 offers superior protection for your data and systems to defend against malicious attacks, malware infections, file corruption, and website loss. It is powered by the fast and reliable Acronis backup technology, and Cloud Linux backup stores your data in the cloud in an offsite location with multiple remote options available. So if you have backups enabled, rather than just trim, you can actually have the system restore the file from the backup back into the system when we detect the malware. Then the next section is disabled rules. Now, disabled rules gives you the ability to go in and interact with different rules that you may want to disable. Now, we already have this one modsec already configured in the system, but you can come in and add additional rules that you want to block by clicking on Add. Now, here you would go in and you would set up a disable rule by adding the rule ID as it comes out of the Firewall plugin. This gives you the ability to read through the firewall, see what the rule is. After that, you can set what the variable is for the tool that the Firewall plugin was using. Was it OSSec? Was it ModSec? LFD or CP Hulk. So you'll set the appropriate rule for that particular portion of the service. Then you can come in, put in a description, add the rule, and you'll find it here. So interacting with rules. So the next feature is feature management. Now I don't have the availability because I've already configured this in my cPanel system. But what feature management does is it allows hosters to enable or disable Imunify360 features for each individual customer. Now on the features management tab here, it is possible to manage proactive defense and malware cleanup for each customer account. Now, if the feature is enabled for a host, like here with cPanel, this can actually be attached specific to the user, to the individual service plans. So here I can come in, click on Edit a Package. I can come into my reseller package or my default, click on Edit. And when I scroll down, we'll see that I have these package extensions related to Imunify360 available, which means I can monetize these. So I have the ability to disable both proactive defense and malware scanner for an account. I could set an upsell on another package where proactive defense is enabled. I can enable under the malware scanner portion just to view. So it's the customer can see when malware has been detected, or we can give the ability for viewing as well as cleanup. These features, if you're not working with cPanel and you haven't enabled it within cPanel, you would be able to do these on each individual account. Same thing. You would be able to have the 3 different settings around malware scanner, have it disabled, report only, or report and cleanup, and proactive defense. The administrator could set these for the individual accounts independently. Then moving into attributions. These are just the callouts to the organizations that have free and open source software that are integrated within our platforms. And here we have the Notifications tab. At this tab, an administrator is able to configure the email addresses to submit reports and execute custom scripts. After switching on any of these notification settings, the fields to where the email can be customized and the script can be made inserted appears. So here you can see we can have an admin email and who it's from. We come down to the real-time scanning. So if we want to enable email notification for the admin, we can enable it. Notification, notify every specific time period, email address, and if we want to execute a script, we can come in and put in a specific script. So we have lots of different ways for dealing with events that the malware scanner in the system detects. So that's a quick run through the settings tabs. Most of the defaults are already configured for you, but we appreciate your time and interest in Imunify360. And if you have additional queries, you can reach out to our sales team and look at setting up a meeting and possible additional demo.